Hello, and welcome to Locutors of Trek, the podcast where we talk about the people, places, and things of Star Trek. So, replicate yourself a Romulan ale or your synth selection of choice, and join us far beyond the stars.
Locutors of Trek.
Program initiated. Enter when ready.
Well, hi there. It's me, Dave.
And I'm Davan.
We are Locutors of Trek.
And plain simple Tailors.
And our prescription today is a discussion of all things, or as many as we can think of things, medical, in the context of Star Trek.
Experts as we are.
Indeed. We are servants of the great Asclepius, Hippocratic warriors at worst. I may have got that slightly confused, but we'll have wounds to sew up.
I mean, to your credit, you actually work in healthcare.
I do, in fact.
And I work in what you could call floral healthcare.
Indeed, that's right.
Or
yeah. Care of our good friends, the plants.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, experts as much as we need to be to get through this episode, I hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's hope so anyway. So yeah, the plan tonight is to think about the practice and the context of medicine in Star Trek, in the many sort of eras and domains it covers. We won't get everywhere. There's a tremendous amount of medicine that's done in Star Trek, and an awful lot that's referenced as well.
And an awful lot that's over our heads, quite frankly.
Oh, sure. That we like the techno babble of Star Trek as much as anyone else in that regard.
Yeah. And, you know, we want to touch on where it's starting to become a reality in our own world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think where we wanted to start off is do a little top 5.
Oh, yeah. I haven't done one of those in a little bit.
Yeah, well, we do
That's
those quite regularly, but, you know, Debate 9 and The Trouble with Trivia have sort of graduated onto their own
That's true.
live segments.
That's a good point.
But
right.
our lists are popular with the audience.
So these are doctor moments.
Yeah, or scenes type of thing.
We thought about favorite doctors, but you know, there's
we could pick the main ones, or we could just try to
be
fancy and say like Sailor.
Right.
So, you know, I could have used
Dr.
a little more
Parmack. We don't ever see on screen, but is a great character.
Yeah, great character in that novel.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's throw down some top 5 doctor moments. 1, 2, 3.
Do you want to start us off?
I'll start us off. I'll start us off with a starting as well.
Oh,
one of my favorite doctor moments in all of Star Trek is on a busted up space station with a very young lieutenant, I think is how he arrives at the station. Dr. Julian Bashir, looking around sick bay, expressing a kind of very enthusiastic for adventure sort of British sensibility, but being out here on the frontier. And at that moment, he turns around and sees Kira Nerys, who just gives him the business as she's just finished doing with Cisco.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, she had a lot of business to take care of that episode.
About being out here on the frontier. You know, some of us live
here.
Oh, gosh. It established such a wonderful tone in the series right away, right? That Starfleet wasn't going to have this absolute a sort of position in the story. It was going to be on some shaky ground in some places. And I love that.
Green Julian Bashir.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she does not like him for most of that season. Actually, for several seasons, I think you could really say that.
He has a great similar moment in the very next episode, I think, too, which is when with Garrick in the past prologue, he's just like, the Cardassian made contact with me, come on.
Oh, that's right.
We don't know he's a spy. Oh, he is. He was very excitable in those days.
So enthusiastic, yeah.
But as Garrick says, not so boyish anymore, Doctor.
No.
And he does do a lot of aging in the show.
Yeah, tremendous maturing process for him. Yeah.
Well, first, I have an honorable mention that I'm going to throw it there real quick.
Okay.
Which didn't make my list, but I do love that moment in the cage because we only see this guy once, like in that one episode of that quite elderly doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and I just like when he says,
Oh, when he serves him the drink and brings it.
yeah,
Oh,
exactly. Bartenders and doctors have the same kind of clients.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
that are living and people that are dying.
Yeah, he's
honorable mention for that quote. It's not really the whole scene or anything. Well, it is a good scene.
But honestly, like,
it is a great scene.
That's a doctor as imagined from the days when doctors still did house calls.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's a really different sensibility about medicine on display there.
Yeah, cool character.
Yeah, and the relationship intimated between him and Pike is fascinating.
Like, you feel like they made the Sawbones kind of nickname for him.
Oh, I mean, sure.
McCoy's kind of old school too, but he really had that kind of old Sawbones feel to him.
Oh, I can absolutely see that for sure. Yeah.
But my real one was my real number 5 is a McCoy moment. Okay. And it's from Star Trek The Voyage Home.
Okay.
And it's just when he's in the Earth hospital and dialysis, that whole scene. He's just like,
what's the matter with you?
Kidney dialysis.
What are we in the Dark Ages? Just yells at everyone, like expecting them to like take what he's saying seriously, and just like, take this, and walks away and cures the woman and stuff. But he's just blown away. His whole thing in that hospital, he's just looking around like just stunned and mortified. And
it's he can't believe, I think, at once how process laden and how time intensive, but also I think how otherwise invasive the medicine is at the time as well, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of medicine we see done in Star Trek is done either through sort of force field manipulation or laser surgery, or I mean, sometimes you get holographic stuff stuck inside you till your real ones come back, right? Like there's very little by way of truly invasive surgery, it seems.
Or if it is, you're completely under or even in stasis, and then by the time they wake you back up, they're like, even the pain and stuff is gone for the most part. Like they've taken care of even that aspect. Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Sounds like the goddamn Spanish Inquisition.
But yeah, that was just a funny one I really like.
Well, from Bones to Bones.
Oh wow.
Another one of my favorite moments with him is actually his progressive breakdown over the course of the search for Spock.
Oh, sure.
And
he's got the Katra.
Yeah, exactly, right? He's got this other persona, this soul inside of him, essentially, that he can't contain. Because you can only imagine that somewhere in the back of his mind, he's got all these Vulcan feelings as well, without any Vulcan capacity to contain that uproar and tumult inside. And he portrays it so well on screen as Bones is just sort of coming apart at the seams.
Well, he's probably also starting to understand the Vulcan perspective better, and he probably doesn't like that. So he's, rebelling against that too. He's like, no.
Yeah. Well, and certainly in the way that it happens to him, I would rebel against it too, right?
True.
Like to be just stuck in that situation. But you're right. He and Spock have a different kind of tone in their relationship after that, for sure. They still rib each other all the time, but it's much more
would you like to do surgery on a torpedo, doctor?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, you go.
Okay, my number 4 is the Doctor from Voyager, obviously. The Doctor, saving the day while singing opera. And I believe that one's in Tinker Tender Doctor Spy, maybe, or
I think so. Yeah, I think I know the moment you're talking about. Yeah, indeed. La donna immobile.
Yeah. You are a Vulcan man. You have gone without for 7 years about. It's like saving the day and like the hypo-spraying people, and it's a great scene. It's my favorite Doctor moment.
He's really,
I love his opera singing, and I love his
he's kind of living his best life right there,
he is, yeah.
The dimension of the opera singing, which I've always wondered to what degree Robert Picardo was involved in that, because he's
Huge.
clearly a fantastic singer.
Huge. Before the show, that's what he was known for, his stage voice.
Right. So clearly that was something they may have been thinking about using when they cast him. You never know. But yeah, the dimension of singing and artistic representation as a way to explore identity beyond the function which has always composed it, in terms of medicine, was really interesting, right? Yeah, what a lovely way to sort of deepen his character.
It's also very illogical.
Okay, so turn to the horrific now. One of my other favorite moments in TNG is in the episode Night Terrors, where the effect begins to play on Beverly. She's in, I think, like a cargo bay or some sort of a medical bay, looking over the corpses that are laid out of the crew of this other vessel, I guess, or whatever it is they found. And all of a sudden they just start sitting up. And I think the first time I watched that, I was maybe like 10 or 11, and I did not sleep. I was just like, oh no! I kept sitting up like the corpses. It was horrific. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Night Terrors, indeed. It was very effective for me.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Night Terrors that made Night Terrors.
Indeed.
Well, my next one's a Beverly one as well.
Oh man, we're riffing here.
But it's actually from the episode Ethics.
Okay.
There's one main moment, but she has 2 or 3 really nice moments that I like. And it's all her interactions with that other doctor, who wants to break all the rules and,
right,
to replace Worf's spine. But the first one is, it's kind of 2 moments in that episode. But the first moment is when they're doing the triage from, I don't know, some accident. And she tries a non-standard method of treatment that she came up with, and it ends up killing the patient. Beverly watches it happen, just turns to her, just like, what did you just do? Calls her out on it right away. So you tried this? She's just like, no, I didn't try that because he was allergic to this or whatever. And she's like, oh, so you did this? She's just like, no, I skipped over that and I just did my experimental treatment. I didn't think the other one would work. She's like, if you'd use the other one, they would be alive. And like, you can't test. She's like, you can't be testing your theories out on these patients. Of course, she's just like, if my treatments are going to save thousands in the future and all this stuff. And Beverly's all like, well, this guy's family is probably not going to care.
Yeah. What about this guy right now?
Yeah, this guy.
Yeah.
So that's a really good scene. And then it's the end. Of course, they do save Worf. And I forget the name of the other doctor.
So do I.
But she comes in just basically to gloat. She wants Beverly to thank her for her part in it, basically. She's like, you're not even gonna acknowledge that I saved your friend and all this stuff. And Beverly's like, no, I'm delighted that Worf's gonna live, but you scare me.
Well, and that question of expediency over method is really interesting, and there's a variety of arguments deployed. There's like the utilitarian, there's going to be a huge benefit later for current pain. There's the sort of argument from excellence that, like, I know what I'm doing, so I have a different kind of moral grounding than other people. There's a lot of really interesting ethical sort of attempts made by that other doctor. And the thing that I remember about Crusher from that episode, thinking back to it, is how remarkable her patience is amid what is clearly maddening exasperation with this other physician, who she's just like, you're so reckless, you're so uncaring about the patient's life.
Yeah, it becomes clear to Beverly that she's only there to test her theory on Worf, which she brags to Beverly about. She's gotten up to like 37% success rate in in simulations.
Yeah, Yeah, and maybe it's because he's a Klingon that it really worked because his
Yeah,
body was like,
Klingon
sure,
37. That's glorious.
give me a half broken one, I'll make it work.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, that's a
So
great
that
moment.
that episode sort of, but those two scenes are
And the drama between Riker and Worf in
It's
that
great in
episode
that
for me often overshadows those other moments.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought that back out of the recesses there. Okay, so number 4, we may be running another riff here. You never know. We seem to be on that kind of a thing this evening.
You're on your
Flo-
number 2, you mean?
Oh yeah, well no, I
We go the other way,
Yes,
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
You know what?
We count
I don't
towards
run
one.
the numbers on this thing.
No,
you
Dave
know
doesn't
that.
run the numbers.
Well, one of the great Doctor episodes in Star Trek, which many people give shade to, but I really love. It's just an episode full of comedy and charm,
Oh,
and it's a night in sickbay.
Night in Sickbay is
Right?
fantastic.
And I mean, obviously, Phlox's weird body and odd night habits are great.
Yep.
But my favorite moment from the episode is chasing the bat around.
Oh, sure. With the
Uh,
hawk.
Yes, they're just like that episode. That episode must have taken quite a while to film. I can only imagine they were just giggling the whole time.
Well, I don't have specifics on bugles, but I do have information on similar chordata.
Bugles.
It's like beagles.
Oh man,
It's like dogs are dogs.
dogs
He's like,
don't do
you,
that.
He's like, don't you have pets on your world? He's just like, well, there's this like thing we eat. They usually have 2 heads. Or sometimes they do.
I'm sorry, Captain. Did I wake you? Just trimming my toenails. They grow quite rapidly.
That is a good one. Night in
Yeah.
Sickbay. And that's that's where they meet the Cretaceans. That's all in that episode. That's a great episode.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, they're the ones that poisoned potentially Porthos.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
So they're real etiquette people.
yeah. Because Porthos peed on their sacred tree.
That's right.
Watered their tree. Narder's like, if anything happens to Porthos, I'll be the one watering the trees.
Talk about cowboy diplomacy.
Oh,
eh?
man.
Oh,
He was a loose cannon sometimes.
yeah.
I mean, he just talk. He never did those things. He would just always say those things to Tripper to Paul. He's like, here's what I'm going to do that I'm not really going to do.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I'm some mad.
Now that I've vented that madness,
Yeah, exactly.
let's go think up an actual plan. Oh,
Which-
no, honestly, it's part of the charm of that series, though, is that they are literally going off into space half-cocked,
Mhm.
really in a fairly harebrained manner most of the time.
Which I'll talk about later in an episode of Enterprise. I want to talk about later as well.
Right on.
Back to you. You're number 1.
Okay, my single favorite moment, apart from the honorable mention of Data walking Bones down the hallway.
Oh no, we just
in-
did yours. Night in
Farpoint.
Sickbay. It's my number 2. Or what are we doing?
Oh yeah. Go back. Oh,
Oh,
no,
yeah,
it's your
no,
number
it's
2
my
now,
number
sorry.
2.
My honorable mention is Bones on the Enterprise, though.
Yeah.
Enterprise D.
Jeez, why am I running the numbers here? I don't know.
Sadly, you're the better of the two of us.
I forgot Beverly's quote from the last one I did, actually, that I really like. She's just like, real research takes time, but you take shortcuts through living tissue.
Oh, that is a good piece
Yeah,
of
and the
dialogue.
doctor's like,
That's nice. That's
Yeah.
nice.
So my number 2 has to do with Phlox. Well, he's not in the scene, but it's his buddy, Dr. Lucas,
Oh, yes.
who he's writing to in sick bay. I think, that you
Mhm.
were just talking. No,
No, that's a different one.
That's Dear Doctor.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about that episode later too. That's a great one.
That is a great episode.
Yeah, that's the one I want to talk about later.
Right Has wonderful structural similarities to Data's Day,
yeah,
in that respect.
yeah. it does.
I mean, it's a great
The writing
premise
the
as the
letter.
episode. Yeah.
Dr. Lucas is being held prisoner by Ericsson
Mm.
and the Augments, and they put Lucas's colleague in that gas chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And Sung's already thinking this is going too far. Like his augments are crazy and he can't control them. He
Mhm.
realizes, but he has to go along with them or else they'll turn on him. So he finds himself in a strange position. So it's not his idea to put the guy in the, I don't know what you'd call it, a contamination chamber.
Yeah, whatever it be. Yeah. gas chamber.
gas chamber.
I guess.
So they put different diseases into it and things. They put the blood burn in.
Oh yeah, that's right. So it's more like it's like a test chamber or something.
Yeah, and it's killing the guy, the blood burn. Lucas won't tell him what he wants to know. He's just like, I have orders. I can't tell you. You can do whatever you're gonna do. I can't tell you anything.
Mm-hmm.
Which he doesn't stick to, because when he puts Phlox in there, he tells him everything. But that's
he
later.
just has to find the right pressure.
He just has to find the right pressure point. But it's just that scene where he's just like, Sung is freaking out because he doesn't want to see this. He does have respect for other scientists, because Lucas is whispering to him, and he has to lean in to hear what he's saying. And he's just like, "What did you say?" And he leans in, and you just hear Lucas going, and
oh yeah.
And Eric pulls away. He's just like, that kind of language is unbecoming of a man of science.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. But he's just like, how can you let this happen? He's yelling at Lucas, and Lucas is just like, how can you? And that's when Sung's like, oh, you're right. Stop it. Like, stop.
Yeah,
He's not going to tell us anything. Stop punishing this human,
Yeah.
And they're like, no. The Algorithms are like, no. Like,
why would we stop?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a crazy scene. It's got 2 doctors in it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that episode's got a lot of interesting sort of intrigue moments in it. Yeah.
Well, several doctors in it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that scene. It's really powerful. Like it's so tense. It's just so tense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it is one of those moments where you think, are they going to get that far? Are they going to be able to take? And it's pretty crushing. Yeah. So my number one here is actually the diametrical opposite of that moment, if possible.
Yours is happy.
Mine is there's a little boy in an isolation cube.
Oh.
And his brother has accidentally poisoned him.
Yeah.
After some kind of, I don't know, prank or something. And he's sitting in there, and Beverly's sitting by the sort of place where she'd put her arms in through the, so we can experience some touch.
Like rubbing his head with like a rubber glove.
Exactly, right? But I mean, if you're that alone, there's comfort there, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And he starts saying that like something hurts, and all of a sudden she just looks at him in response. She says, well, then don't move it that way.
Yeah.
And she's just so gentle and empathetic.
No, he says he gets dizzy when he stands up.
That's right. And she tells him the joke about the doctor, and he's like, it hurts when I lift my arms. Like, well, then don't lift your arm. Yeah. It was a lovely way for her to sort of caution him about his growing limitations due to the virus, but also to
cheer him up a little.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just like bedside manner at its best.
Speaking of bedside manner, one thing I've noticed about watching some of the first episodes of Voyager lately is like the doctor can access all his data files pretty immediately, except for the bedside manner one. The only thing that ever makes him like look off to the side and think for a sec is when he's trying to figure out how to like not be terrible to the person. But when you get to know Zimmerman later, that all makes sense.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
It's a deep file. It's not like near the top.
It's not one of Zimmerman's go-tos.
No.
A neurochemical imbalance is driving him to mate. We won't be able to reason with him.
You'll be fine. Smile.
Oh yeah.
But my number one is a Dr. Bashir moment. And it's his showdown with Ross in Inter Arma Enum's Silent Legis.
Oh yeah.
Where it's the Section 31 stuff, and he thinks Ross is working with them, which he sort of is. And he walks in, and he's just like, tell me, where's Sloan, Admiral?
Yeah.
He's just like, Sloan's dead. Where's Sloan, Admiral? And like everyone knows Julian's just enhanced at that point.
Yeah.
And he's
Like,
just
there's
staring
not
you
really
down.
any
Like, there's
point
no
arguing
question
with
in his mind. He's just going to stare at you and ask this question until you answer it. So, and he's just like, if we're going to have this conversation, it's off the record. And Julian just takes his comment and just throws it down because he's disgusted with Starfleet
like,
at the moment. You know?
Off the record's best place for this.
Yep.
Oh, that was such a
And
badass
it's not
scene.
so much about medicine, it's more about the ideals of the Federation. But it's a great scene.
Well, I mean, that pervades Julian's practice of medicine, from the time he tries to heal those Jem'Hadar
Oh yeah.
of their addiction to the planet with that terrible disease on it.
I suppose O'Brien's better them than us.
Exactly.
They'll die better than them us. Get out of here, Julian. They need
O'Brien
each
must suffer, and O'Brien does not want to be here.
other. No,
Those two things we know.
because he suffers. It's like,
Exactly.
man, you know how this episode's gonna go if we don't get out of here, Julian. You're gonna be fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I might turn out to be a clone of myself. I don't know. What is it?
Am
this
I
week,
clone me,
guys?
Julian? Am I clone me? But if you want to do a more medical version of that scene for my number one, it could be the showdown he has with Cisco about the biomimetic gel.
Oh, interesting.
I want that in writing. Cisco already has it in writing and just throws it at him. Just like, but I want the gel. But he's like, I'm gonna file an official protest with Starfleet. Yep,
You
and they'll
do
get
it.
it tomorrow. But I want the gel in like 2 hours. So look it up.
Oh man, Cisco.
Cisco knows how to work the system
And
and kind of walk the lines.
he had such an interesting agility that way, because he had moral agility in terms of his imagination, say in the moments where he'll play Javert
Oh, sure.
or Eddington, but he's also got, he's got spiritual imagination. He's got organizational imagination. You're absolutely right. It's really interesting. He's just a guy with vision.
As opposed to when Picard tries to play Javert, which is like him as Galen trying to like, you suck, Riker. You're that traitor from the Enterprise, and it just sounds so fake coming from Picard.
the wonderful scene in Picard season 1. Are we still pretending?
Yeah. Are we still pretending? Yeah, that's pretty great.
Oh, that is such a campy scene, like with the eye patch and everything. Oh man. Again, one of the ones they must have been giggling through the entire time, I'm sure.
Well, that's our top 5 medicine. Not top 5 medicine. That's our
top 5 medicine.
doctor moments of Star Trek.
Word time starts soon.
Word time starting now.
We look for words to make us go.
HMS podcast.
So no, the good ship Lollipop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. What's the crew complement of the Lollipop?
Well, why don't we have a techno babble?
Oh gosh.
Let birds go further loose, maybe. Round the turbulent quick. Well, close the reverse harbor.
Since the words are not coming to us, let's babble.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
What's on your mind, techno babble wise?
Well, top of mind for me is medical technologies in Star Trek that are becoming more of a reality.
It's a great theme generally with technology in Star Trek.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But certainly a few examples in the medical field we can point to. Certainly one is the tricorder. A few years ago, they did that Qualcomm X Prize. Say, it was a $10 million prize for a successful tricorder. So it had to be able to diagnose like 10 different.
Oh, so they wanted like a medical tricorder.
Yeah, medical
that's
tricorder
awesome.
that could diagnose like 10 different things, diseases. And they were specific ones like diabetes and like cardiopulmonary things and
Sure,
all kinds of different things.
Well, if you got something that could get, the top 10 diseases in the world.
And it had to be less than 5 pounds. And
I suppose if you were thinking about the kind of thing
non-invasive.
Spock or the Doctor wears with the strap
yeah.
on the original series, that'd be 5 pounds would be easy for that. Yeah, for sure.
So, and the medical ones are bigger, and so are the engineering ones are even bigger than that. The engineering tricorders. But and it got delayed for a while, and then there was only 2 companies left, and eventually, like, no one quite met the criteria.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they got close. There were 2 companies, one from Taiwan, I think, and one from the US, and they just didn't quite get there. So they split the prize up between them a little bit and took like $7 million, I think, to put back into more research and development and to proliferate the breakthroughs they did make
Right.
into hospitals and things. So close, but no
interesting.
cigar, but getting there with the medical tricorder.
Yeah.
I was excited about it when they announced that, like way back then, and I was because had just had the successful Ansari X prize to get to suborbit.
Sure.
So I'm like, all right, they're just going to start like giving people money to do scientific breakthroughs. Here we go.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because with the devices we carry around in our pockets, you can get a bunch of standard tricorder like functions already.
Oh yeah,
right. You can get gravimetric, electromagnetic, lumen readings for the room you're in. You can get
the
distance readings. You can get the weather out of it. Sure. There's a lot of apps that will allow you to access the various accelerometers and things inside the phone to take advantage of that and get the readings you can. They're mostly passive readings, of course, because these aren't the active devices in any other sense other than maybe light to measure distance. But one of the medical places certainly that I got excited about, and I think I sent you the article a few weeks ago with about 19 exclamation marks at the end of it, is this is an article from New Atlas published on the 4th of November. It's written by a guy named Ben Coxworth, called Kobe Robot Autonomously Performs Needle-Less Vaccinations. That's right, needle-less vaccinations. Indeed.
Hyposprays.
It successfully performs an intramuscular injection without using a hypodermic needle, which is essentially this, right? They uses laser light to determine a 3D map of the area it's going to do the injection for depth sensing. Once they do that, they get the
that's a good breakthrough in that
robot arm,
actually, that
right?
That mapping, because that technology has been around since like the 40s.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would be used to, say, measure a melanoma on someone's skin to do radiation treatments with and that sort of thing. Similar technology.
I meant the actual
the spray. Yes.
Spray. Yeah, they were doing injections with like a nebulizer.
And
but a bunch of people got hepatitis. Well, it wasn't good enough that the whole point was it would be less contaminated.
Precisely.
But it didn't work out like that then.
So this uses somebody else's needleless technology to inject vaccine in the form of, and I quote, a high pressure jet of fluid that passes through a human hair width orifice. End quote. So this really is essentially a hypospray. It's not going to, as far as we can tell, it's not going to leave a mark. You're not really going to, you may feel something there.
Yeah,
but
I've heard it described as the size of a mosquito proboscis as well.
Right. And, we see people feeling stuff from hyposprays, even in Star Trek, right? They're going to feel that pressure from the high density jet of fluid. But that's a wonderful step forward in without the need for the metallic intervention. Sterilization is probably easier. All those steps, right? Ideally.
And the when they tried it before, other than the contamination that happened, it just wasn't superior. The wounds took longer to heal. It hurt more.
Right. That's a good reason not to use it.
Yeah.
Highly.
That one should be a reality. Like that should be something that should be able to proliferate.
Well, and at this rate, I think the question for me would be, I mean, the use of a robot here, I think, is partly the company's mission, but partly for, if you were dealing with something extremely infectious, you could send a robot in to do vaccinations with people you weren't sure were affected or not. That might be a great way to save staff and other medical personnel from a risk of infection that they wouldn't therefore need to take. Could be great that way. We'll wait to see for the handheld version, because the end of that thing on the robotic arm looks like half the size of a football. So you'd be running up and clonking somebody with this thing.
It's the hypo fist.
That's right. We call it the rock of injection.
Doctor, did you just punch me? No, that was a hypo spray.
Don't you feel good now? Almost had a technical difficulty, but it was saved.
I'm trying to get some.
But there's other places where we have significant advances as well in terms of the understanding of prosthetics, where we've seen the growth in a market for very, very high-end high finesse, very high degree of dexterity prosthetics, particularly arm and hand prosthetics, but also leg and walking prosthetics as well, which we don't hear a whole lot about in Star Trek. We hear more about replacement organs like hearts and that sort of stuff. But one imagines those are also exactly right. And now they're making those from clone tissue, which is also something that's beginning to be a reality. You may have heard at this point of things like sort of Beyond Meat or printed muscle lattices. These are all ways of producing either meat-like but not meat substances, or in fact attempting to produce and print living tissue in the form of sort of muscle lattices and things that would be ideally able to be given as replacements for, I assume, either damaged or otherwise compromised tissues. Maybe infected tissue that has to be removed, and you give some of this back. That process comes about essentially as made possible by the fact of 3D printing.
Yeah, I'm just
These
looking
other
at an
techniques are
article
there.
here about
Here we
3D
go.
printed organs.
Right.
Of course, could save lives by addressing transplant shortage and that type of thing.
Sure. And if we can print these things from our own DNA or our own cells, we would have far lower risks of rejection. There's less need for medication and pharmacological load that way, which in any of these cases is going to help the system to ideally get itself back on track and healed up and integrated as fast as possible.
And there was a company that did something similar to Geordie's visor.
Oh, yeah?
That allowed blind people to see, shapes and different,
interesting.
different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Colors even, I think.
Right on.
Because it turned it to sound and then back into vision for them.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
The first place I ever heard about one of those sort of neural interface devices was years and years and years ago, an article about a gentleman who I think he worked in neuroscience, and as part of one of the experiments he wanted to devise, he had rigged up, I think, his sailboat to it had sort of pulleys and stuff so that he could sit on the front deck of it with this sort of set of neurons on his head and be meditating and sail the boat.
Oot in a boot, was he?
Oot in a boot, right? Wouldn't that be a great way to spend the day?
Yeah.
Jacked into your sailboat and just going out there, feeling the breeze.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it caught me as a just a wonderful piece of like whimsical science testing, like just a tryout of something, Yeah.
And of course, there's been advances in nanotechnology and things like that we see a lot of course, with 7 of 9.
Sure.
And Beverly was studying nanotechnology and things like that.
Yeah, there's a number of experiments that she's doing over the series with things like that. Yeah. So we're moving in these directions, as we gain more and more of a grasp of what our fundamental systems are doing, and even at the level of understanding all of our fundamental systems as ultimately grounded in wave patterns that can be manipulated or enhanced, through sound therapies or other kinds of things. It's absolutely fascinating where we're going.
Getting away from technologies that are becoming more of a reality, unless you had something more.
No, go right for it.
A technology that's not really a medical technology in Star Trek, but that we see used in that way sometimes, and it makes me wonder why it's not used that way more often. And that's the transporter. Because we know that you can be transported back, and if you have a disease or a contaminant, they can remove that from the pattern buffer and just bring you back without it.
Yeah.
It just seems like that's never used. in a medical situation, only in like beaming back from a planet kind of
Right,
situation. But like
right.
if people have diseases in the
Yeah,
medical bay all the time.
why
don't
wouldn't you just
beam it out?
have a medical transporter
Yeah.
in there you could use for those purposes?
Yeah. Seems like a plot hole to me. But
That's a great question.
I mean, maybe
Starfleet's known about the Boimler effect for a longer time, you know.
maybe.
They just don't want ships full of people going whee at whatever frequency that is.
And then, if you want to talk about the peak of medical technology, you'd have to talk about the Vidians.
Right.
Who not only can they transport out a disease, they can transport out organs.
Mm-hmm.
Lungs, the lungs of Neelix, for example.
Indeed.
And
held up by holographic pressure in the end.
Yeah.
Right. That was a lovely idea in that episode.
Which no other Doctor likely would have had. There's a few times in that series when the Doctor gets a specifically great holographic idea that is just in his wheelhouse, but seems so far outside of the norm that other Doctors probably wouldn't get there.
Paris, please find a way to load a hypospray. I will give you the sign. Just aim for his behind.
Yeah, I can imagine you're right. And
holographic lungs thing, like that's genius.
It may also be useful to note there that probably most Starfleet Doctors before the EMH program was installed in starships would have had holo emitters in sickbay, which does mean that he has a sort of technical capacity to do it that would have been much more difficult for other ships to have accomplished. They would have had to taken somebody to a holodeck.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, opens up a dimension of medical holography in that sense. That's
a good point.
Yet to be very explored at all by Trek. Yeah, that's awesome.
And maybe that's where they're at with the transporter too.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to figure out how to more safely apply that to medical situations.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
Or maybe the doctors just don't want to leave procedures up to the engineers. We have a patient in sickbay, Mr. O'Brien.
Why then is his spleen in holodeck 3?
It's my favorite holodeck. Poor Stompy.
Oh, Stompy.
And beyond that, even the Vidians, what's the episode?
And that's out of terrible necessity on their part.
Yeah. Now, they say they were known as educators and explorers before that. So they were likely quite advanced in science to begin with. But of course, then you turn that whole society onto focusing on the phage. Of course, they find Klingons are immune to the phage. And there's that episode. So their transporters are so advanced that they can split your DNA in half. Like that Vidian turned B'Elanna into a human and a Klingon at the same time. Two different people.
Yes.
That's how advanced their medical transporter technology got. So they obviously saw the potential in the transporter for medical purposes. I mean, obviously, because they wanted to steal organs and things. But it just seems to be a little overlooked by Starfleet, the transporter there.
Yeah. And, perhaps it's part of the understanding of medical ethics they've developed that for some reason they don't want to put people through that any more than they have to. I don't know. But yeah, it's a really good question because there's a lot of stuff that should be able to just be routinely screened out that way.
As far as Star Trek goes, I think that they're the height of medical technology that we've seen. I mean, in a way, the Borg 7 and 9 can do a lot of crazy things with nanites. But
yeah, she brought Neelix back from the dead when he was super dead.
Super dead.
Yeah, like he'd experienced brain death at that point, as far as I know. Like everything was shut down.
She's like, yes, he's experienced brain death, so I have about 8 minutes to do something.
Like, oh my god. Yeah, but I suppose you never know what the Borg are going to be able to do with a drone that's not too damaged.
They're like, no, the 8 minutes just ended. She's like, no, the 8 minutes just started.
Yeah. I mean, her understanding of death. I mean, what would a Borg even imagine death to be? Just rest?
Lonely.
But their life is sort of, I could see that. Yeah.
Disconnected from the hive.
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps always with the hive.
Yeah.
On some level.
Well, I wonder, you wonder if they'd get recycled somehow, I would assume.
But you could say almost the most prominent medical character we've seen in Star Trek is Schmallis.
Schmallis?
Schmallis.
I don't remember Schmallis.
You don't remember Schmallis?
I don't think I do.
That's what Dr. Dinara Pell, I believe her name was, the Vidian doctor that the doctor falls in love with.
Yeah.
Names him after her uncle.
That's right, Schmallis.
And then you forget about that and they like contact her for like just a second in an episode in a crisis and she's just like, Schmallis.
I forgot all about that. God, that's a great detail. Nicely done there.
Schmallis.
They have a really sweet relationship, honestly.
They do. They really do.
Yeah.
She's just trying to get him to acknowledge the better parts about himself too. Like,
yeah.
She laughs at his joke and he's just like, what are you doing? She's just like, you're funny. He's just like, what? Well, humor has known to have therapeutic qualities and consider it part of your treatment.
Oh, yeah.
But like, yeah, and he takes her to Sandrine's.
Well, that's right. That's right.
She's like, if I had a place like this, I would be here every day. Yeah, down at Sandrine's.
You, madam, might have a drinking problem.
Or a pool problem.
That's true, a pool problem. That rhymes with, starts with P and it rhymes with T, and that spells trouble. Jeepers.
Well, speaking of the doctor, though, another great episode with him that really has a lot of medical ethics and stuff involved with it as well is, what's it called? I think I've lost the title for the moment, but it's the one where he's abducted the doctor and he's sold to this hospital ship, basically.
Okay.
And the hospital ship belongs to, I can't remember the name of this, but the hospital ship belongs to a species who they're suffering some sort of like general plague type of thing, or like genetic failure or something like that. And so they've hired this other species that's known for their great administrative abilities to kind of fix their society.
Right.
And, that's the one where they've given everyone the TC, the treatment coefficient. The more useful you are to society, the more treatment you get.
Right.
God, what's that one called?
I don't recall, but yeah, this is kind of a chilling society.
Critical Care.
Oh, okay, great.
So yeah, it's great actors in that too. Great guest actors. What's his name? Something Blake plays the administrator.
Oh yeah.
And there's another doctor played by Gregory Itzin, another good character actor. Both very good in this one, because Gregory Itzin's character, he's a good doctor. He doesn't like this whole system, but he acknowledges that it has propelled their society forward because their society was crumbling. You can see what they're doing. I mean, it's completely barbaric and not empathetic, and
sure,
certainly not doesn't. You have to break a Hippocratic oath pretty quick.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of philosophical debates in that episode, even between the doctor and Gregory Itzin's character, and the administrator as well. He's just like, the society was crumbling, and so there's this level blue and there's level red, and everyone who's kind of poor, because that's the thing. They're like, well, it's okay to have a level blue, because as soon as the people in level red become more useful to society, they'll get a higher TC and then they'll get more treatment. But it's like they don't create the opportunities for that upward mobility to ever happen.
Sure. Yeah.
So
applicants for entry-level job, please, 5 years experience. Yeah.
So
they've essentially created their own incentive to keep these people captured. Ultimately,
yeah, and the administrator guy he's just doing his job. He has no sympathy for this at all, and the doctor keeps disobeying him he keeps stealing medications to give to the level red patients.
That's awesome,
because it saves their lives. But the people up in level blue, they're not even sick. Actually, they don't even have the plague or whatever it is. It's something like that, or it's just I don't know. Their society is just riddled with maladies for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I can't quite remember that, but they're just getting it for arterial aging up in level blue. And the doctor's like, but their arteries are fine. They're like, yes, but if we give them this cryoxin or whatever it is, their life could be extended by up to 20%. So
we'll just keep them taking this stuff for their entire lives.
Yeah, instead of giving it to people whose lives it'll save.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah, I mean that is an ethical, literal perversion. Like looking at what you could do as right and just taking a big old turn on about face and doing the wrong thing. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Woo. That's nasty. That's nasty.
Yeah.
It creates a classed society where
oh yeah,
there may or may not have been one before, but reorganizes it along a totally different principle, right?
And forces your doctors to compartmentalize in a way they really shouldn't have to do. Just like,
yeah,
horrible for my patients, but better for society, sort of thing. It's not a decision a doctor should have to deal with.
No, ideally not,
partake in.
right? And you know, there are questions of triage in medicine about who to treat first and who to treat second.
Sure.
And you know, what are the most necessary or whatever. But
whose needs
you're right.
are the greatest.
Yeah,
they do the opposite of triage in that.
Precisely, they you know, their triage is a triage of sort of immiseration, ultimately, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just spreading the awful around.
But where he starts to appeal to Gregory Itzad's character, he's just like, you had less use here this month for this. I think it's called cryoxin or something like that. Than you did last month. He's just like, yes, because we healed some patients, so we needed less. He's just like, yes, and because of that, they've allocated you less for this month. And then if you do it again, they'll allocate you less. He's just like, you have to give the drug to the patients that need it, because then you'll actually get more of it and you can treat more patients. And he's just like, you just have to start doing that. And that's where Gregory Itzad's character starts to be like, oh yeah, our system's actually not as flawless and well thought through as they're making it out to be, you know? So then the doctor does something crazy and he poisons the administrator guy with the plague.
Right.
So he needs the cryoxin, but he's also I should say before that, that character, the administrator guy, started sending the people home that the doctor treated because they've already met their medication allocation for the entire year. So he's just like, so I sent them home and they're all just going to die, the doctor says. And he's just like, yeah, well, that's your fault, isn't it, doctor? So he's already putting all these deaths on the doctor.
Right.
So, you know, the doctor's getting a bit overwhelmed with the whole thing and getting angry. So, especially one patient he had, patient R12, as the administrator keeps saying, and the doctor keeps going, his name was Tebis. So he puts his genetic code, or like they read their blood, so somehow he put some of his blood into the administrator. So the system reads him as Tebis, so it won't give him any cryoxin. He's just
that's interesting.
After he poisons him, you know. And he's just like, well, you know, get me somebody who can help me. And so he brings in Gregory Itzad's character, and he's just like, get me out of here, get me to level blue. He's just like, well, I can't, because we're not allowed to use cryoxin in level red, so I can't help you. And he's just like, I know the rules, I made the rules. He's just like, well, you should be glad then that since you made the rules that I take them at such high regard. He's just like, but he's like, but if we change the rules so that people in level red can get cryoxin, then you can get some as well. And the doctor is just like, well, I don't know if you're looking for a second opinion, but I concur, doctor. They're just roasting this guy while he's dying. But then at the end of the episode, last thing I have to say about this episode, I'm focusing on this one a bit, but it's kind of my favorite Doctor episode, other than him singing opera and saving the day.
Sure.
Illogical.
He asks 7 of 9 to give him a checkup when he gets back, and he's like, so there's nothing wrong with my ethical subroutines? And she's like, no. And then he tells her what he did. He's like, I poisoned a man. She's like, to save many. He's just like, yes, but I'm supposed to do no harm. She certainly doesn't think that way. So she's just like,
he will survive.
Yeah. No, doctor, you have a clean bill of health. Anyway, it's a great.
Yeah. But it's an interesting sort of dynamic it raises about, particularly about clinical medical spaces that, okay, so I'm going to have us just imagine a hospital room here, right? It's a room that's got a door that's slightly oversized. So if you're in a transport chair, something can come in and out of it. It's got a bed that's got all the bells and whistles, and there might be gas lines or whatever in the head of the bed behind you. There might be a curtain to come around you. It's a fairly sterile room. Might have a window, might not. Fluorescence overhead for the most part. Linoleum floor. And whatever is in your space, your patient space, the area around your bed, maybe if you got a night table or whatever, that's your world, right? It's a situation in which there can be a high degree of alienation because you're not in your familiar surroundings. But also it's a situation where, try as anybody might, and this is not a point about anybody's intentions in this situation, it's a setting in which the practice is to analyze symptom presentation in terms of the sets of the body's systems that may well be impacted or present in those ways. And so part of the challenge of a medical environment is the very practice of a kind of material reduction of symptomology to underlying physical states that can transfer over to the personhood as well. And so very often people can become what's called institutionalized very quickly. They can find themselves feeling very alienated and not like themselves, because in many ways, a lot of pieces of themselves, their familiar settings, their habits, their daily routine, the people they talk to or interact with, the kind of food they like to eat isn't there. And so all those elements of self that are dependent upon our outside environment can get dropped away. And then the rest of us reduced to a system of systems as a body very easily. And so in those environments, it's really easy to become locked into a process if we're not all paying attention to what's going on. And that's what things like rounds are for. You know, when we bring the name and the condition of each patient before ourselves and say, okay, what are we doing about Jim Bob? What are we doing about Bertine? What are we doing about, whoever these people are? What do they need? What's happening?
Jim Bob needs a new hip.
Right? Jim Bob's going to be out of the hospital real soon. That's awesome. Might have a wait time, but that's an ambulatory surgery these days. A lot of the time. That's great. That blows my mind.
Need a new bone?
We'll
sure.
just pop a hip in there and send you back out the end of the day. It's amazing.
Screws.
Gosh, incredible. Absolutely incredible. And honestly, thank the great bird of the galaxy for physiotherapy in that rate, I mean, all those allied health disciplines. That's one of the things I wonder about on starships as well. Like, do they have teams of physiotherapists and occupational therapists and all that stuff? Do their medical practitioners have to integrate a variety of those techniques?
I mean, we see Worf getting physical therapy after his surgery.
We absolutely do.
I mean,
and who is that? Is that with one of the nurses from sickbay, or?
I think Deanna's helping him.
Okay. So we may be seeing in those medical practitioners,
she may have offered to,
sure, but kinds of skills that are getting picked up that wouldn't exactly fit professional profiles from right now, but still have some of the same words attached, like nurse or doctor. So their scope of practice might vary considerably from what we would understand those roles to have today.
And I think they referenced Nogg's physiotherapy that he got after his leg.
That's right. Yeah. And he got like rehabilitation there. He learned to walk again with that and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
That type of thing. But another great doctor episode we could talk about, because it has some interesting moral implications as well, is an Enterprise episode. The one we were talking about earlier. Dear Doctor. And that's the one with the Valakians.
Oh, yes.
And they have a genetic disorder that's been going on for hundreds of years, where it's just getting worse and accelerating now. But their DNA is breaking down, and they have another sentient species that they cohabitate with on their planet.
And that's right.
Called the Menk, I believe.
Yes.
And the Menk like the Valakians and say they treat them really well and stuff, but they don't let them. They also say the Valakians don't let them live where the soil is good, but the Valakians provide all the food that they need. So they're not really allowed to take care of themselves, but they're looked after.
Yeah, they're a sort of captive population, essentially.
Yes, but they don't have this. So Phlox determines that the Valakians are going extinct naturally, and it will happen within a couple hundred years, and that it's natural, and the Mank will then become the dominant species on the planet. And he's seen by interacting with them a lot of potential. They're picking up language easy and things like that. But as we've discussed with Archer, they're out there to just do a little cowboy diplomacy. And he's like, well, you can save these people. He's just like, I've developed a treatment that'll make their symptoms diminish a bit for about 10 years. And Archer's like, well, could you find a cure? And Phlox just clams up. I mean, Archer stares at him more, and he's just like, I already have, but I don't think we should give it to them. And Archer's just like, what? And he's just, but Phlox has a great speech. He's like, because he tells Archer about how it's a natural evolutionary process and things. And he has Archer, he's just like, didn't your species used to cohabitate on your planet with other humanoid species? What if an alien came out of the sky and gave the Neanderthals, I guess, super technology or an advanced,
Yeah.
He's just like, yeah, well, good point.
Yeah, it's one of those beautiful moments where the Prime Directive is just sort of sitting suspended above the scene going, you don't know me yet, but you're going to love me.
Yeah. But it's a pretty great episode. And then at the, he thinks Archer's going to go against him and force him to give them the thing. But Archer doesn't. He's like, I thought on it. He's like, I have to go against all my principles, but you're right. And then he does his, one day my people will come up with a doctrine for how to act out here. It's like going on about the Prime Directive before it even exists. He's like, but until somebody tells me about that doctrine, I'm just going to have to make it up as I go along. It's pretty funny.
No, tell us what the series is about. But I mean, it's a good idea for what if we had Star Trek before the Prime Directive? Just romping around out there, getting in trouble, having little scrapes and stuff till you cut Florida in half, and then all bets are off.
Yeah. Dr. Lucas in that episode is having a bit of stress because it's mating season on Andoria.
Oh, that's right.
And Phlox is like, I too understand the stresses of mating season on Andoria.
Oh man,
that's a good one.
Yeah,
but he ends it. He's just like, I feel bad because I underestimated Archer. I shouldn't have, but now I respect him more and that sort of thing. It's good. It's a good episode. I like that one.
It's a tough place to be because I can imagine being in the spot of Archer where I'd want to be able to leave that place knowing like, no, fix that, big check mark. There's something quite wonderful in being able to solve a situation. But one of those clinical realities you run into sometimes is that the situation is not going to be solved. It's going to be coped with. It's going to be eased along. Ultimately, it's going to be palliated. Because the word palliative doesn't mean relating to death. It means softening. So palliation is literally the softening of that process so that we can do the work of winding our life down without, crazy pain or discomfort or any of that stuff impinging on us in quite that same way, right?
No, we mentioned triage earlier, and one of the more prominent examples of that I think we see in Star Trek is, what is it? Julian, he's down on the planet with Jake. What's that one called?
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, what a great episode. Man.
Yeah.
Just hold on a sec. I'll switch.
But, obviously it's from a war situation, and soldiers are coming in injured.
Nor the battle to the strong.
Nor the battle to the strong. Quite right. And that's that's a very doctor-focused episode. You're seeing the doctors that have been there the whole time and how they're kind of desensitized. They're joking about their food and how it looks like guts and stuff to Jake, and it makes him want to puke and not eat. And they're like, what? You get used to it. And,
yeah, man.
Yeah, that's a pretty serious one. But it shows you to some of the places, in Star Trek where they send the doctors to the front lines, and it's not necessarily safe. As they tell Jake, they're like, the Klingons don't really care if you're wearing a doctor's uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really true, eh?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was trying to look up where the phrase "nor the battle to the strong" is from. One of the things that's suggested here is, who said the race is not to the swift nor the battle to the strong? It's possible the words are from Damon Runyon, the newspaperman whose short stories inspired. No, a different Damon.
Oh, a different Damon. Okay.
Damon Runyon. He's a newspaperman whose short stories inspired the Broadway musical Guys and Dolls and some other things. So it could be there. Yeah.
Sounded like a Ferengi phrase to me. Well,
Indeed.
One of those late rules.
I mean, it comes ultimately from
the Ferengi.
Well, it also comes from Ecclesiastes 9, verse 11, in the King James Version of the Bible, which reads, "I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all."
Very nice.
Yeah. One of those great pieces that challenges the wisdom literature and the rest of itself. Yeah, man. But medicine in that sense draws us close to the human spirit, ultimately, right? The human creature that is suffering or grieving or healing or dying, or sort of rejoicing at healing, for that matter, which we do as we leave the hospital, maybe best of all.
And we mentioned the phage, but we see other plagues as well on Star Trek. There's of course the Babel plague.
Yes.
Let birds go for the loose maybe.
Where everyone just talks gibberish on DS9.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, they'd have to quarantine the station for that one. That's a quarantine situation. No one's allowed in on or off the station.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time we see that.
Is that an O'Brien solve? I don't remember.
What?
I don't remember who solves that in the end. Is it Bashir in the end who solves it?
I think it is O'Brien, or he's trying to explain it to them in gibberish. But
That's right.
Yeah.
Round the turbulent quick.
Oh yeah, that was a great episode.
But we also see the quickening, which is a Julian episode where he has to go down, and they've had that plague for so long they've all given up on treatment.
Oh,
they
that's
take
right.
kind of the opposite approach the Vidians took. The Vidians didn't resolve themselves to dying,
But these folks, they've actually been looking for dignity in death.
Yeah, they say, "Take me to Trevian," they say.
Yes,
And Julian thinks he's the doctor and he's healing them, but he's just easing their pain, giving them a nice meal and a hot bath, sleep in a bed. They're all living in extreme poverty. They get a nice,
he's giving hospice care, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things
Julian doesn't appreciate at all.
No, he's very much out of that. And I think one of the things about Julian in that I contrast with Trevian is his youth compared to Trevian's physical maturity.
What he's seen. This is still a young Julian, like the first couple seasons, I think.
And I think death for Julian is defeat.
No, but Bajoran women have been sneezing their way through pregnancy for over 100,000 years. You can't expect me to cure it overnight.
Well,
death for Julian is failure, which is, I think, probably a constitutional challenge for many people who are doing direct care in healthcare, because you're working so hard to maintain someone's function or keep them alive or whatever it is.
Well, as he says in the episode too, it was his own arrogance when he thinks he's not going to be able to solve it.
Yeah. And the fact that all of his electromagnetic equipment accelerates what's happening is, oh God, that's just a real stomach churning moment.
And then he cures it, but only for the next generation. Like the children will be born free of it, but everyone else still has to die horribly. So it's like, it's not quite a happy ending.
It's not perfect.
It's a classic DS9 ending where you're just kind of
absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. It'll do.
It's super satisfying on an intellectual and enjoyment level, but
yeah. Oh, stop the world. I want to get off.
Yeah, exactly. Stop the station.
Yeah. And that's a theme that runs through Julian's practice of medicine. If we go from his Elasian paramour that he tries to turn into a regular gravity person to his work with the oddball augments, Jack and the others.
The Jack Pack.
The Jack Pack. And he does the exact same thing again with one of their number when he begins I forgot her name now. Is it Charlotte or whatever her name is?
Oh no.
When he begins to heal her,
Serena.
and Serena can actually slow down enough to begin
to talk,
speaking and doing things.
Yeah.
Julian always struggles with his ability to cognize and grasp what can be in a situation, but then to allow others their own agency, right? Because I think like his own excellence just runs right past that a lot of the time. And we do see him grow a lot with that. But still, like, he still foibles that up in different ways all through, right up to the end of the series. You know, he's kind of messing that up with Ezri for quite some time. And not in a medical mode, but in a sort of interpersonal mode, till very close to the end of the series, you know? It's an interesting character challenge in him. Where he is in that sense so young and
he knows he's genetically enhanced too, and he can't tell everybody that in those early seasons, like where his arrogance is coming from. He's like, no, I know you don't think a doctor should be able to go down to this planet and solve the plague, but I probably should be able to.
I should do this.
Yeah, I should probably be able to do this. If anyone can, it's probably going to be me, so I have to try.
Cure a 10,000-year addiction to Ketracel Light for the Jem'Hadar. Do it in a weekend.
Yeah,
it's fine.
And you should taste the field rations I invented in medical school. Delicious and twice the nutrients of a regular field ration.
He's a regular Moskowitz, that guy. Yeah.
Chief loves field rations.
I bet you he does.
Julian, you're
the hero of Setlick 3.
Appreciate your field rations. But you know what? Honorable mention back to the top 5. I was struggling. I knew there was a doctor moment in Voyager that it was my favorite, and I was trying to think of what it was, and I thought it was with the Valakians and everything, and then I realized it wasn't. So I'm like, nah, I'm throwing in the awesome opera scene. That's the one. But you know, my favorite Doctor episode, and this has to do with medical stuff too, and medical ethics, is his one with the holographic Cardassian doctor he brings on to help him.
Oh gosh.
Invasive procedures, is it that one called?
Yes.
That's a crazy episode, and the banter those two have to go back and forth with the ethics.
Oh, because he's so evil. He's just
not
so
empathetic at all.
Brutally amoral.
Good Cardassian doctor.
But he's very much a Cardassian of the vintage of Parmack or Garrick or any of those guys. Absolutely. But probably the generation before Masset.
Parmack didn't seem to be that way.
But it would have been from a similar era.
Sure.
Yeah, no, Parmack, I think he comes off as a
kind of a quite
not guileless, but a very gentle guy for a Cardassian. Which may have been his real problem with an Aberrantane. He's like,
you know, he's the wrong guy to become his.
He seems nice. I'd better torture him.
Yeah, exactly. Been examined by that doctor twice now. I wonder what his plans really are.
You live paranoid that long.
Elim,
right?
would you like to interrogate the doctor for me, Elim?
Oh man,
I could stare at him for a few hours. Yes, that should work nicely.
That'll do it. Yeah. That busted the last guy's mind.
Yeah, exactly.
His eyes.
That was Parmack.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But that episode is, fantastic because he's similar to the doctor that Beverly had to deal with on TNG. Worse. Like she was like took shortcuts through human flesh, as Beverly said, but
this guy just rolled up his sleeves. Yeah, he's getting right in there.
Yeah.
But it brings up another piece of the sort of medical dimension here that we see something of, which is the kinds of radical techniques that we see from the quote unquote surgically altered of many episodes when they just change them to look like a different species, to the one that's really on my mind is actually it's Gul Madred and the pain generator that he has. Because there's several episodes in which some variety of a pain generator, whether it's the Mirror Universe episode of the original series where they actually execute a guy with the agonizer, I think it's called, to
just basically what they do to that doctor with the augments and
Yep.
Eric's looking to basically
Essentially.
just agonize him to death.
Yeah. And that's what Madred's doing to Picard. He's got this thing on him
Yeah.
that just sends hideous pain through his body, but otherwise doesn't injure him.
Doesn't work on a Garrick.
Nope, doesn't work on a Garrick. He's got that lovely little, well, it might now.
Right now.
But yeah,
The Wire.
that sort of weaponization of medicine, and which induces realities like what we see in the episode The Wire precisely, is sickening, but it's an all too real dimension of medicine when put to the uses of sort of the reason of state.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the needs of the patient. When we put those same techniques to a different use, they can get pretty malign pretty quickly. Whether it's the kind of stuff that would render a planet uninhabitable to Cardassians or to humans, but not to others, or the kinds of things we see the augments thinking about doing, or whatever it is. Those moments where the medical becomes the sort of real ground of that moral evil is it makes for some pretty chilling stuff. Like in the episode, what is it? It's not Schisms, is it? Where I forget what the name of the episode is, where the crew of the Enterprise.
We're bad with episode names today.
Yeah, we're really on it. But it's the one where there's the clicking noises and the subspace realm, and the crew members are getting pulled into it and getting like,
oh yeah,
I think Riker's arm gets lopped off and reattached, and there's that crazy scene in the holodeck.
They try to reconstruct
exactly.
the chair.
Oh, that is just like, that is one of those scenes that, again, like psychologically just pulled at the back of my mind, little threads loose, while I was watching it. Because it's just the sort of thing, like, when you're a little kid and you pull up the covers so that the monster can't get you if they're that high, that's sort of a fear.
It's Schisms.
It is. Oh man,
nailed it.
Oh,
yeah,
that was
it starts
unexpected.
off with Riker not being able to fall asleep.
Yeah,
everyone feels like they got, and they have a similar. Voyager has an episode like that too,
with the phased out scientists.
Yeah, they're poking their brains with things too.
Oh my god!
And then they mess with the wrong captain.
She's just walking around with this blinding headache.
Didn't realize.
Oh my gosh! Doesn't one of them just ask her, like, "Have you just been forgetting to eat again," or something like that?
Oh yeah, she hasn't been eating. She's just been drinking coffee for a week and hasn't slept. So she's just like, you know what? I had enough, and starts to fly into a sun.
Yeah, don't.
Like, you're not gonna do this. She's just like, you don't know me very well.
Like, you don't have this headache either.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are moments when you get a bad migraine or something that jumping into a sun might not be the worst plan.
Even more than Cisco, she's like the last captain you want to just push over her edge.
Oh no,
over the limit.
No. That's when she goes back in time.
She'll
and
come
saves
back
her
in
crew,
time, exactly.
Right? She. Yeah.
These Cisco's be like, well, maybe space. No, you know what? I take that back. He'll fly into a wormhole and be like, hey, you could make this Jem'Hadar fleet disappear.
That's true. That's what a great episode.
Yeah,
man.
But so is that Voyager one. Yeah, that's like, again, but that's another. That theme seems to come up a lot in Star Trek with like the medical professionals just getting too narrow-minded in their approach, and the loss of empathy and that sort of thing too.
Well, and I think there's a really interesting set of questions there, particularly in terms of the sort of history and philosophy of science around the question of the scientists' responsibility for the uses of their science. And in this case, there's an even tighter focus, right? Because you have someone who is a sort of practitioner of the science of medicine, but that science involves practice upon live human subjects, which is about as high wire an act as you can sort of imagine thinking about without an insurance company around, and you definitely want ethical constraints. You definitely want to be able to debrief with people because it could be quite often life and death in there. And that's one of the weird, I think, absurd realities of medical care, is that it's people who are people like any other people trying to do often quite extraordinary things, or certainly difficult, challenging, skill-oriented, grueling things that produce safety and health.
Well, I think Star Trek has laid out a positive vision for the medicine of the future. It's nice how it becomes more and more relevant as it does.
One of the things I like
Forget
best,
the point I was going with there. I had a point.
but honestly, one of the things I like the best about the practice of medicine as we see it in Star Trek is that it is, and was in the 60s when the show first started, it was very patient-centered medicine.
Yeah.
The rights of the patient to accept or refuse, all that kind of stuff, were so baked in there, which are really fundamental medical values for practitioners today.
Unless you're Kern, then you don't get a choice. You just get your memories erased.
Yeah, and it's a piece of mercy, but it's a real DS9 ending.
Yep.
Like, well, that was ambiguous.
Yep. It's just like, so is Bashir the bad guy at the end of this episode? Is Worf the bad guy? Who's the bad guy?
I feel like there's gotta be
a bad guy here. They just erased the guy's brain without asking.
Maybe all of them. Yeah.
I don't know.
Jadzia?
No.
Captain Baudet.
Gowron.
I do not like Captain Baudet.
Oh well, definitely Baudet.
Oh yeah, Gowron could have been the bad. I mean, he
Baudet's brain you could erase with a. You can see it while you're doing it.
He got such a bad rap from us. He's gonna come at us for defamation at some point. Stop picking on my brain.
You've been contacted by the lawyers of Baudet.
Baudet and Associates.
Baudet. I didn't know he was a lawyer. Right. That was his brother Toadette.
Captain Baudet at bar. He practices out of quarks.
Not so sanitary.
That's true. Well,
yeah, I think
it looks like we've drifted into
insanity.
Yeah, into the realms of madness, which is another episode.
Yep, the madness of Star Trek.
Indeed.
Hormones are raging, synapses blazing. It's all so very illogical.
Well, having discovered that, we're going to turn down the lights and shut down the ward for the night. We'll make sure the drips are running and the checkout time is good. End transmission.
Sky smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see. Oh, bluebirds singing a song, nothing but blue skies from now on. Never saw the sun shining so bright, I never saw things going so right. Noticing the days hurrying by, oh, when you're in love, my how they fly by. Blue days, all of them gone, nothing but blue skies from now on. We're here.
We are? Oh, look. That's not blue.
Oh, I said I wanted to sing Purple Skies.
Oh, I don't know Purple Skies. Purple Rain?
Okay.